A memorial plaque for sailors, speeches by admirals, and then everyone goes home happy. Not here. The locals are ethnic Russians, but they live in the Ukraine. They believe this plaque, proudly installed by the Ukrainian Navy, is an insult to their identity. It didn't last long. This scene in Sevastopol is just one example of the increasing tensions between East and West, which recently led to the war in Georgia. Passions are running particularly high here because some Ukrainian politicians want their country to join NATO. If these Russian protesters react like this over a plaque, what would they do if the Ukraine did join the alliance? Could this actually lead to fighting?
People would be ready. There is this proverb, it takes a Russian a long time to horse a carriage, but once he's done, it's very hard to stop him.
The British Foreign Secretary, David Miliband, recently came to this country, supporting Ukrainian and Georgian membership of NATO.
Miliband is quite provocative. Unfortunately, what the British Foreign Minister says is a disgrace to the British nation. We don't go to London to teach the Brits how to live.
The loyalty of men like him lies here, Moscow, once the capital of the Soviet Empire, now of a resurgent Russia. I've reported from Moscow for the Sunday Times for 11 years now. During that time, I've watched the tensions between Russia and the West rise. Following Georgia, relations are now at their worst since the end of the Cold War. Anti-Russian rhetoric has never been so high.
The picture emerging is that of a Russia increasingly authoritarian at home and aggressive abroad.
Russian aggression is something that has been condemned throughout the world.
So that's the West's perspective, but what I want to give you a sense of is Russia's view. What is the mood on this side of the fence? And most of all, should we be scared of the Russians? It sounds like Dallas. It looks like Dallas. They've even got oil like Dallas. But this is the Moscow party to celebrate the first Russian edition of the society magazine, Tatler. Since the end of the Cold War, Russia has embraced capitalism with a vengeance. In fact, Tatler is a new kid on the block. There's now a Russian Hello magazine, and Vogue has been here for 10 years.
I have a feeling that almost all the country changed. When I look at my first issues, I think, oh my God, this was the magazine done and tailor-made for a different country.
At events like this, the Russia of today looks more like the West than ever. These people are educated, sophisticated, and travel abroad. But scratch the surface, and even here, people say we don't understand them. And nowhere more so than over the recent invasion of Georgia. Billionaire Alexander Lebedev is unusual. He's a vocal critic of the Kremlin. But he too says Russia was unfairly treated over the action it took.
I think there's too many wrong things said about Russia. Everybody in the world says this is the old aggressive Soviet-style Russia, now attacking a small democratic and very peaceful state.
So what do you think the war was actually about? How do you explain Russia's
I think
reaction?
Russia had no other way but behave this way. We mishandled it from the point of view of propaganda, of explaining our position, but the West, there should be a bit more objective.
What is it that the West doesn't understand about Russia?
If I could tell it and specify it, the issue would have been resolved in 1 minute, and it hasn't been resolved for hundreds of years. What happens is that sometimes people in the West think they know and understand Russia and Russians, but they don't.
This feeling of being misunderstood goes all the way to the top. Next to Russia's strongman, Vladimir Putin is one of his closest associates. Sergei Ivanov believes that we in the West are the true Cold War warriors. Not them.
much more convenient not to understand and make the impression that nothing changed. Old habits and old perceptions die hard. And even if we explain our position sincerely, openly, it doesn't mean that it won't be falsified.
Too much mistrust.
Yes. The wall should go, as my favorite Pink Floyd song.
Yeah, I know you're a big Pink Floyd player.
Yes, I am.
He may like Pink Floyd, but Ivanov spent more than 20 years in the KGB, where he first met Vladimir Putin. He's right about that mistrust, though. Many things divide us from ordinary Russians, not least our views on Putin himself. Many Russians think of Putin as nothing less than their country's savior. By contrast, the West sees him as a stony-faced autocrat, just like we viewed the men who ruled the Soviet Union at the height of the Cold War.
I looked into Mr. Putin's eyes, and I saw 3 letters, a K, a G, and a B.
That may sound provocative, but in the West, many think of Putin as a man bent on turning back the clock.
There is some truth to that, of course. Certainly in my time here, I've seen quite a few changes for the worse. Putin has crushed all opposition, he's clamped down on the media, and he's cancelled regional elections.
He also launched a brutal second war in Chechnya, which killed tens of thousands of civilians. It's not that Russians like everything they see, but for most, debating the state of democracy is not a priority. In fact, many Russians can't get enough of Vladimir Putin. A pop song was written in his honor. Most Russians would have liked Putin to stay on as president instead of bringing in Dmitry Medvedev. And they're pleased he's still in control, now as prime minister.
Well, given the level of Soviet-style propaganda Russians are fed on television every evening, that's hardly surprising. But the truth is that Putin is genuinely popular. A staggering 90% approve of him in the wake of the war in Georgia.